The headquarters of Sterling Global was a tower of steel and glass that scraped the night sky, gleaming with authority even when the rest of the city slept. Its upper floors belonged to the elite, executives who signed contracts worth more than entire neighborhoods, whose names opened doors across continents. But down on the lower levels, past the echo of marble lobbies and elevators that smelled faintly of cologne and power, the night belonged to the cleaners. Malik Johnson pushed his cart along the silent corridor of the 32nd floor, the wheels squeaking in protest against the glossy tile. He was a tall man in his late 40s, shoulders broad from years of heavy work, skin the color of midnight, eyes that carried both weariness and watchfulness. Malik had learned long ago that silence was both a gift and a burden in this building. No one paid attention to the janitors, and in that invisibility he found safety, but also erasure. He wiped down the long mahogany conference table, the kind of table where billion-dollar ideas were born and broken. His mind drifted to his daughter, Layla, who had just started university. Tuition payments loomed like storm clouds, but he worked double shifts, determined she would have the life denied to him. The clock ticked toward midnight. Malik reached for his headphones, ready to drown out the emptiness with a little jazz. When it happened, a shrill, piercing ring cut through the air. He froze. The sound came from the corner office, the CEO's sanctum, where no cleaner lingered more than a minute, as though the walls themselves demanded reverence. The phone on the massive glass desk vibrated again, its foreign ringtone discordant against the hush of the building. Malik glanced around. Empty. The other cleaners were 2 floors down, busy with vacuuming. Security didn't patrol this late until after 1. It was just him, the phone, and the silence. He hesitated. The rules were clear. Do not touch anything on the CEO's desk. Do not disturb any private belongings. Do not, under any circumstances, answer the phone. But the phone kept ringing, insistent, almost desperate. Something about the tone gnawed him. Malik had always trusted his instincts. Instincts that told him when a fight was coming in his old neighborhood, when trouble was brewing before anyone else could see it. Now those same instincts told him this wasn't an ordinary call. His hand hovered above the receiver. He imagined the CEO's fury if he discovered a janitor had meddled. But he also imagined the unknown voice on the other end, calling again and again into the void, unanswered. With a deep breath, Malik picked it up. "Sterling Global, good evening," he said, his voice cautious but steady. For a moment, there was only static. Then a voice broke through, thick with accent and urgency. "Hello? Hello? Is this Sterling Global? It is Mr. Kovacs from Budapest. Please listen." Malik blinked. He had no idea who Mr. Kovacs was, but the name carried weight. The voice trembled with panic. I call, but no one answer. The contract, we cannot wait. Tomorrow, no today. The deadline is now." Malik's heart thudded. He wanted to hang up, say it was a mistake, but something in the man's voice, a sharp mix of fear and desperation, held him still. I'm just staff here," Malik admitted. "But maybe I can take a message?" No message," the man snapped. Then, softening, "Please, you must tell me, delivery of the terms, the guarantees, without them, everything is lost. Our investors, they leave. I lose everything." Malik gripped the receiver tighter. He understood loss. He understood the edge in a man's voice when the ground beneath him threatened to crumble. "Slow down," Malik said gently. "Tell me what's wrong." The man on the line exhaled shakily. "We sent revisions yesterday. If Sterling Global does not agree, our deal, finished. I cannot wait for your office hours. The world does not wait." Malik glanced at the CEO's desk. Papers were scattered across it, draft contracts, meeting notes, correspondence. His cleaner's eye had long ago trained itself to notice details others ignored. The circled figures, the bold underlined words, the sticky note that read Budapest, priority. Something clicked. This wasn't just any client. This was the client. The CEO's biggest overseas partner. Malik's palms grew damp. He had no business being in the middle of this. He was a janitor, not an executive. And yet, he was the only one here. The only bridge between a frantic man in Budapest and a sleeping empire in New York. He swallowed hard. Listen, Mr. Kovacs. I'm not the boss. But I hear you. I understand this is urgent. Let me try to help. There was silence on the line, then a weary chuckle. A janitor who listens better than my partners. Very well. I explain. As the man spoke, Malik scribbled notes on a discarded pad. His handwriting was rough, but his focus razor sharp. Every word mattered. He didn't understand all the legal jargon, but he understood tone, urgency, the way a man begged not just for money but for survival. By the time the call ended, Malik's chest felt heavy, his mind racing. He placed the receiver back down carefully, as though returning a sacred object to its altar. The office was silent once more, but Malik knew the silence was an illusion. The air vibrated with consequence. He stood alone in the CEO's office, staring at the scribbled notes that now carried the weight of billions. Somewhere across the ocean, a desperate client waited for an answer. And here, in the middle of the night, a janitor had just stepped into the role of lifeline. Malik exhaled slowly. He didn't know it yet, but the ring of that phone had changed everything. Forever. The office felt colder after the call ended, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the urgency of the conversation. Malik leaned against the polished desk, staring at his scribbled notes. His handwriting looked jagged, uneven, like it had been shaken into existence by the desperation in the man's voice. Budapest, he whispered aloud, tasting the word like something foreign and fragile. The clock on the wall glowed 12:43 a.m. The CEO, Richard Sterling, wouldn't arrive until after sunrise. The other executives wouldn't trickle in until later. But Mr. Kovacs had sounded certain that by morning, it would be too late. Malik paced the office, mop still leaning against the wall like a forgotten sentry. His job was to clean smudges and polish floors, not rescue billion-dollar contracts. And yet, he had answered the phone. He had listened. That simple act had shifted the responsibility onto his shoulders, whether he liked it or not. The phone buzzed again, its foreign ringtone slicing through his thoughts. Malik's pulse quickened. He hesitated, then lifted the receiver. Sterling Global, he said, more firmly this time. Ah! You answer again! The voice was relieved, then trembled with impatience. Please, I cannot waste minutes. You are, how do you say, assistant? Malik swallowed. He didn't want to lie, but he also couldn't confess that he was only the cleaner. I'm here on the night shift, he said carefully. But I'm listening. Tell me what's happening. A long breath crackled through the line. Then came words rushed with urgency. The investors, they demand proof of your commitment. Without confirmation by morning, they withdraw. We stand on cliff edge. The man's voice cracked. I cannot fail, not now. Malik gripped the receiver tighter, his brow furrowed. He could almost picture the man, probably sitting in some office across the sea, surrounded by anxious staff, the weight of hundreds of jobs pressing down on him. It wasn't just about numbers on a contract. It was about survival. I don't have authority, Malik admitted softly. But I can listen. Maybe I can pass along what you need. You must write, the man urged. Write everything. Guarantees of delivery, extension of credit line, adjustment, and penalties. These 3 things. Without them, my board walks away. Malik glanced at the desk. Scattered papers bore Sterling's signature, drafts of agreements, highlighted passages. His eyes caught on one note in bold letters: extension, possible if collateral secured. Another sticky note had Budapest priority, underlined twice. Malik's instincts sharpened. "All right," he said. "Tell me again, clearly. I'll take it down." The man repeated the list, slower this time. Malik scribbled furiously. His hand cramped, but he pushed through. He wasn't a lawyer, but he understood promises, understood how much weight words carried when someone's future depended on them. The voice grew steadier as Malik listened without interruption. You understand me better than others," the man murmured. "Always rush, no patience. But you listen." Malik felt a small sting behind his eyes. Too many times in his life, people had looked past him, assuming he had nothing to say. But tonight, halfway across the globe, someone trusted him. When the man finally stopped, Malik read back his notes, his voice careful, deliberate. The line went quiet, then erupted in a grateful sigh. "Yes, that is it. You are my savior. Please, tell Mr. Sterling as soon as possible. Promise me this." "I promise," Malik said, the word tasting heavier than any vow he had ever spoken. The call ended with a click, leaving Malik alone in the cavernous office once more. He stared at the notes, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. He could do one of 2 things. He could throw the notes away, pretend none of this had happened, and go back to polishing floors. Or he could hold on to them, make sure they reached the CEO's hands before the sun rose. But something deeper stirred in him. A question he hadn't allowed himself to ask in years. What if I'm meant for more than this? Malik shook the thought off. He couldn't afford daydreams. His job was stable, his paycheck steady. He worked hard so his daughter could dream instead. That was enough. Or at least, it was supposed to be. Yet the urgency of that voice across the sea clung to him, weaving into his conscience. He remembered how it had cracked, how it had pleaded. He thought of the man calling back to find no one answering, to watch his empire collapse in silence. Malik couldn't bear it. He sat at the CEO's desk, the leather chair swallowing him. The city lights stretched out through the floor-to-ceiling windows, glittering like scattered jewels. From up here, the streets looked small, the people smaller still. He thought of his daughter walking those streets, unaware of the choices her father faced tonight. His phone buzzed. A text from Layla. "Don't forget, tuition deposit due next week. Love you, Dad." Malik's throat tightened. He clenched the notes in his fist. He couldn't fail her. He couldn't fail the man across the ocean either. The phone rang again. Malik jumped, then snatched it up. "Sterling Global," he said. This time the voice was different, female, accented sharp. "Mr. Kovacs told me he reached someone. Is this his contact?" Malik hesitated. "Yes. I spoke with him." "Good. Then you will tell me, what assurances did you give him?" Malik looked at his notes. His hand trembled. "I didn't give assurances," he said carefully. "I wrote down what he needs. I'll pass it to Mr. Sterling." There was a pause, then a low laugh. "You are careful. That is wise. Listen to me. These investors are not patient. If Sterling Global delays, they move to competitors. Do you understand? Time is not luxury." "I understand," Malik replied. "Then listen well," the woman said, her tone clipped. "Do not let your employer waste hours. Without commitment, Kovacs Industries will collapse. And when it collapses, the ripple will reach you too." The line went dead. Malik sat frozen, the receiver pressed to his ear long after the call ended. For the first time, Fear settled into his gut. Whoever she was, her voice carried the weight of power and threat. He placed the phone down and looked again at the glowing skyline. The night was no longer silent. It thrummed with urgency, pulsing through his veins. The voice across the sea had reached him. And now, whether he wanted it or not, he was part of this storm. The building hummed with a low drone of machinery, air vents, distant elevators, the occasional buzz of security cameras. But inside the CEO's office, silence wrapped around Malik like a cloak. He sat hunched in the leather chair, scribbled notes sprawled before him like pieces of a puzzle. Budapest. Deadlines. Guarantees. Collateral. The words glared up at him, foreign yet urgent. Malik had grown used to cleaning up after men who tossed around terms like these with ease. He had picked up fragments over the years, snippets from boardroom meetings, half-heard conversations while wiping down whiteboards. Enough to understand the rhythm of business, but never enough to be part of it. Until tonight. The phone had rung twice now, each time pulling him deeper into waters far beyond his depth. Yet somehow, he hadn't drowned. He had listened. He had steadied his voice. He had given men on the other side of the ocean a reason to believe someone heard them. But would that be enough? Malik rubbed his temples. His mind raced back to his younger days, when he had worked at a shipping dock. There, too, he had acted as an impromptu translator, helping foreign workers understand safety signs or instructions. His gift had never been fluency in languages. It was patience, an ear for tone, an ability to sense what someone meant even when their words were clumsy. Now, across continents, that same gift had been called upon again. The phone lit up once more. Malik's chest tightened. He lifted the receiver. "Sterling Global," he said, his voice steady. "Ah, my friend." It was Kovacs again, his relief palpable. "Thank God you answer. Listen, please. Investors, they press me like wolves. I need—" "Slow down," Malik cut in gently. "One thing at a time." There was a pause, then the man chuckled weakly. "You have patience. I am not used to this. Everyone rush, always. But you wait." Malik smiled faintly despite the weight on his shoulders. "Tell me what they're saying." For the next half hour, the man spoke, words tumbling over one another, slipping between Hungarian, broken English, and business jargon. Malik wrote feverishly, pausing now and then to repeat back what he thought he heard. "You mean they want the penalties reduced, not removed, right?" "Yes. Yes, reduced. You understand. And the collateral? You're offering machinery as security?" "Yes, equipment. If Sterling agrees, we survive." The rhythm formed, like waves hitting a shore. Malik listened, clarified, repeated, and little by little, order replaced chaos. He wasn't fluent in contracts or economics, but he was fluent in listening, and tonight, that mattered more than any polished accent. By the time Kovacs fell silent, Malik's pad of paper was filled with jagged handwriting and underlined phrases. The man sighed heavily into the phone. "You are not executive, are you?" Malik froze. His throat tightened. "What makes you say that?" "Because executives never listen this way," Kovacs said softly. "They speak, they command. But you ask questions. You repeat. You make sure I feel understood. That is not executive." Malik's chest ached. He wanted to confess, to say, "I'm just the cleaner. I shouldn't even be on this line." But something held him back. Not pride, fear. If Kovacs hung up believing he had wasted time with a janitor, what then? Would he give up? Would the fragile hope Malik had offered collapse into silence? So he answered carefully, "I'm here because no one else is. And I'll make sure your words are heard. That's my promise." Kovacs chuckled again, but it was a weary sound. Then you are better than half the men in suits. Promise me one thing, friend. Promise me you will put these words directly into Sterling's hands. I promise, Malik said. The line clicked off. Malik set the receiver down and leaned back. His body trembled, not from fear alone, but from the sheer weight of responsibility. He had promised. His word was all he had, and now it bound him to a billionaire CEO he had never spoken to, and to a desperate man across the sea who trusted him more than men with polished titles. He exhaled slowly, then turned to the computer monitor glowing on Sterling's desk. The screensaver shimmered with the Sterling Global logo. Malik hesitated. He had no right to touch it. Yet, perhaps the answers he needed were locked inside. He shook his head. No. That would be crossing a line he couldn't return from. Instead, he turned back to the notes. He began rewriting them, neatly, clearly, stripping away the clutter until they read like something an executive might actually skim and understand. His daughter's tuition flashed again in his mind. Layla deserves more than this. She deserves a father who can rise above a mop bucket. As he wrote, his phone buzzed. Another message from Layla. Studying late. Wish you were here. Don't overwork yourself. Malik's heart swelled with equal parts pride and sorrow. She didn't know he was already overworking himself beyond measure. She didn't know her father was sitting in a skyscraper office, acting as a bridge between continents. The phone rang again. Malik picked it up, already expecting Kovacs. But this time it was the woman's voice, the sharp, accented one from earlier. So you spoke with him again? Yes, Malik replied cautiously. And? He's desperate. But I've taken down everything. I'll make sure Sterling sees it. A pause. Then, good. You may have saved him. And yourself. Her words sent a shiver down his spine. Who are you? He asked. You don't need my name, she replied. Only my warning. Do not fail to deliver that message. If you do, everything crumbles, and not just for him. The line went dead. Malik stared at the receiver, his pulse hammering. He had never felt so caught in the center of a storm. A storm he hadn't chosen, yet one he couldn't escape. He glanced at the papers one last time, then slipped them carefully into his cleaning cart, hidden beneath rags and bottles. No one would think to look there. As he wheeled the cart down the empty corridor, the weight of what he carried pressed against him. He wasn't just pushing cleaning supplies anymore. He was carrying the fate of a billionaire's empire, the lifeline of a desperate man, and perhaps, unknowingly, the seed of his own transformation. The janitor had become the translator. And in that fragile role, Malik had discovered a truth. Sometimes the world doesn't ask for polished suits or grand titles. Sometimes it asks only for someone willing to listen. And Malik Johnson was listening. The 32nd floor was silent except for the squeak of Malik's cart wheels. Yet Malik knew silence could be deceptive. The real noise, the rumble of panic, the roar of collapsing fortunes, was happening thousands of miles away, in boardrooms and banks he had never seen. As he pushed the cart toward the janitor's closet, the folded notes, hidden beneath rags and bottles, weighed heavier than stone. They weren't just scraps of paper anymore. They were lifelines, contracts waiting to breathe or choke. Malik locked the closet door behind him, and sat on the overturned bucket, the fluorescent light flickering above like a faulty heartbeat. He unfolded the notes once more, his eyes scanning the words until they burned into his mind. 3 demands. Reduced penalties. Extension of credit. Collateral in machinery. Each line was simple enough. Yet behind them lay consequences he could barely comprehend. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he imagined Mr. Kovacs in Budapest, sitting in a smoke-filled office, tie loosened, hair disheveled, pleading with investors who tapped their watches impatiently. Malik could almost hear their cold voices. No extension. No patience. Walk away. He opened his eyes, heart hammering. If Sterling didn't respond in time, everything would collapse. Kovacs Industries would fall. Sterling Global's reputation would fracture. The CEO's empire might wobble under the weight of betrayal. And Malik would be the forgotten witness to it all. Unless he acted. The phone in the janitor's closet wasn't connected to outside lines, but his own cell buzzed again. This time, a new number lit up the screen, foreign and unfamiliar. He hesitated, then answered. Hello? Static crackled, then a man's low voice, hushed but urgent. This is not Kovacs. I am his advisor. Who are you? Malik's grip tightened. I work nights here. I've been speaking with him. You're not an executive, the voice snapped. Then why do you answer? Because no one else did. Malik shot back, surprising himself. A pause. Then quieter. Then perhaps you are the only one who will. Listen carefully. If Sterling Global delays, the collapse will not only destroy Kovacs. It will ripple. Factories will close. Hundreds of workers, families gone. Malik's stomach twisted. He had seen what collapse looked like. He had lived it when the factory in his own neighborhood had shuttered, when fathers drank themselves into silence and mothers fought to keep the lights on. Collapse wasn't just about contracts. It was about lives. What do you want me to do? Malik asked. Deliver the message, the advisor said. But know this, others will try to silence it. Too much is at stake. The line cut out before Malik could respond. He sat there, staring at his phone, a cold sweat breaking across his skin. Others will try to silence it. Who were these others? Rivals? Investors hoping to profit from failure? Or people inside Sterling Global itself, preferring collapse over compromise? He didn't know. But the warning dug deep. When Malik stepped back into the corridor, the building felt different. Shadows stretched longer, the silence sharper, as though the skyscraper itself knew it was sitting on a fault line. He pushed his cart slowly, his eyes flicking toward every corner, every camera. For the first time, he felt watched. As he reached the CEO's office again, his reflection stared back from the glass walls. Broad shoulders, janitor's uniform, mop handle jutting like a... Yet unwilling to retreat. He slipped inside. The desk was exactly as he'd left it, but something was different. A drawer was ajar. Papers had shifted. Malik froze. He hadn't touched that drawer. Someone else had been here. His pulse spiked. Had another employee come through? Security? Or worse, someone trying to erase the very notes he carried? He quickly checked. The sticky note marked Budapest. Priority was gone. The absence was louder than any alarm. Malik pressed his palm to the desk, steadying himself. He couldn't afford to panic. He needed clarity. He glanced at the clock, 2:17 a.m. Just a few more hours until the CEO arrived. He only had to hold on, guard the truth until then. But whispers of collapse echoed in his ears. Not whispers from Hungary, but whispers here, within these walls. If someone had tampered already, they might try again. The phone rang. Malik jumped. He snatched it up. Sterling Global, he said, voice clipped. Malik? Kovacs' voice broke through, strained, almost hoarse. Yes, it's me. They are leaving, Kovacs stammered. The investors, they prepare to walk away at dawn. I beg you, please, you must tell Sterling. Without this, my company is finished. Malik's chest tightened. He heard voices in the background, loud, angry, in a language he couldn't follow. It sounded like chaos, like walls shaking. I'll deliver it, Malik said firmly. I promise. Promise. The line crackled. "My friend, you are my only hope now." The call ended. Malik lowered the phone slowly, his hand trembling. He stared out the window at the city, the streets quiet, unaware of the storm thrashing across the Atlantic. He thought of his own past collapses, jobs lost, bills unpaid, the humiliating day he had sold his father's watch to cover rent. He thought of Layla, her future fragile as glass, balanced on the sacrifices he made every night. He knew what collapse meant. He couldn't let it happen to another man, even one he had never met. But the danger was no longer just oceans away. It was here, in this office, in this building. Someone had already moved to bury Budapest's plea. And Malik, the janitor, was the only one left to keep it alive. He tucked the notes into his jacket pocket this time, closer to his chest. Then he locked the office door behind him, pressing his back against it, listening to the silence. The whispers of collapse weren't whispers anymore. They were pounding, insistent, rattling the very glass of Sterling Global's tower. And Malik Johnson stood in the middle of it, a man no one noticed, now carrying the weight of billions, and the fate of strangers on his shoulders. The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead was constant, but Malik's thoughts roared louder. He sat alone in the janitor's closet, the smell of bleach and ammonia sharp in the air, his jacket pocket heavy with notes that didn't belong to him. The three demands: reduced penalties, extended credit, collateral, burned like coals in his mind. They were simple enough on paper, yet dangerous enough to unravel empires if ignored. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the worn mop head drooping from the handle. A ridiculous image flashed through his mind, himself standing in front of Sterling Global's boardroom table, mop in one hand, contract in the other, begging them to listen. He shook his head and chuckled bitterly. Who would listen to a janitor about billion-dollar deals? But Kovacs had listened. More than that, Kovacs had trusted him. The thought steadied Malik's breathing. Trust was rare in this building, rarer than diamonds. Executives didn't look him in the eye, let alone hand him responsibility. Yet across an ocean, a desperate man believed his words mattered. The shrill buzz of the service phone startled him. He snatched it up. "Malik?" Kovacs's voice cracked with fatigue. "You are still there?" "Yes," Malik replied. "My God, thank you. Listen to me. They are ready to leave. My investors, they sit here now. They shout. They say Sterling has abandoned me. Please, you must confirm, some promise, anything." Malik's throat tightened. "I can't confirm," he admitted, his voice steady but low. "But I've got everything written. I'll put it in Sterling's hands before the sun comes up." "No," Kovacs said, panic flaring. "That is too late. By then, they are gone. You must tell them something now. Please." Malik rubbed his forehead. His eyes scanned the closet, the rags, the bottles of cleaner, the dustpan. Nothing here could help him. But he remembered the CEO's office, the scattered memos, the open drawer. Someone had already tried to bury this problem. Maybe the answers weren't in the phone calls. They were in the files. "Kovacs," Malik said slowly, "give me a little time. I'll find something." He hung up before the man could argue. His legs carried him back to the CEO's office almost on instinct. The glass walls reflected his broad shoulders and dark uniform as if reminding him, "You don't belong here." But he pushed the door open anyway. Inside, the air was crisp with the scent of leather and polish. Malik went straight to the desk. The ajar drawer beckoned like a secret. He tugged it open. Papers, contracts, drafts, dozens of them, stacked neatly, but one folder caught his eye. Red tab. Bold black letters, Budapest Project. His pulse spiked. He slid it out, careful not to disturb the others. Inside, pages of correspondence, emails printed and highlighted, margin notes in sterling sharp handwriting. Malik scanned line after line, his eyes darting over terms and figures he barely understood. But one page froze him. Extend line of credit up to 6 months if collateral secured in machinery. Penalty reduction negotiable at 15%. RS. Malik exhaled sharply. There it was. The very lifeline Kovacs needed, written in Sterling's own hand. He pressed the page flat, memorizing every word. This wasn't hearsay. This wasn't Malik improvising. This was proof, black and white. If he could just convey it, maybe the investors would hold on until Sterling arrived. The phone rang again, sharp in the quiet office. Malik grabbed it. Sterling Global. Malik? Kovacs's voice was barely audible under a cacophony of shouting in the background. I found something, Malik said quickly. Listen carefully. Sterling wrote, extend line of credit up to 6 months if collateral secured in machinery. Penalty reduction negotiable at 15%. His words, not mine. The shouting softened. Silence. Then Kovacs spoke, trembling. You are sure? I'm holding the paper right now. On the other end, Malik heard murmurs, then muffled voices, then a single loud declaration in Hungarian. A wave of quieter discussion followed. Finally, Kovacs returned, his tone steadier. They will wait. Only hours. But you saved me for now. Relief washed over Malik, so strong his knees nearly buckled. Hold them steady, he urged. Morning isn't far. God bless you, my friend, Kovacs whispered. You are no janitor tonight. You are my partner. The line clicked. Malik lowered the receiver slowly, his hand trembling. Partner. The word sank into him like a weight and a bomb at once. No one in Sterling Global had ever called him that. He gathered the Budapest folder, slipped it under his arm, then wheeled his card back into the corridor. Every creak of the wheels sounded louder now, every shadow deeper. He knew someone else in this building wanted these words buried. The missing sticky note proved it. And if they learned he had the folder, he would no longer be invisible. The elevator chimed softly as it opened on the far end of the hall. Malik froze. A man in a dark suit stepped out, briefcase in hand, his eyes scanning the corridor. Not security. Too sharp. Too purposeful. Malik ducked his head, pushing the cart as if nothing were unusual. The man passed him, their shoulders nearly brushing. Malik caught a faint whiff of cologne, expensive and sharp. The man didn't look at him, yet. But Malik knew. The whispers of collapse weren't whispers anymore. They were footsteps in the hall, briefcases opening drawers, hands plucking away sticky notes. He kept walking, the folder hidden beneath a pile of rags and disinfectant spray. Cleaning supplies shielding confidential files. The irony wasn't lost on him. When he reached the service elevator, Malik exhaled. He pressed the button, his pulse racing. He needed to make it until morning, deliver the folder, and keep Kovacs's fragile empire alive. As the doors closed, he whispered to himself, just a few more hours. But in his gut, Malik knew the hours ahead would not pass quietly. Because tonight, the cleaner had become the custodian of secrets, and secrets had a way of making powerful men restless. The service elevator creaked as it descended, each floor passing with a groan, like the weary sigh of a beast forced awake. Malik stood stiff, his card before him, the Budapest folder buried beneath rags and bleach bottles. He kept one hand pressed against the card handle, the other against his chest, feeling the flutter of his heartbeat. It was nearly 3 a.m. The city outside gleamed in darkness, a river of headlights crawling along avenues, but inside Sterling Global's tower, the world felt still, too still. When the elevator doors opened, Malik rolled out into the underground level. Concrete walls, dim yellow lights, the faint hum of ventilation. He headed toward the janitor's lounge, a place no executive would bother entering. His plan was simple: hide there until the CEO arrived, guard the folder, then hand it over. But simplicity had already abandoned him tonight. His phone buzzed again. He fumbled it out of his pocket, answered. "Malik?" Kovacs's voice was hoarse, frayed at the edges. "I'm here," Malik whispered. They grow restless again. Investors threaten to leave by dawn. I cannot calm them without proof. Do you have it?" Malik looked at the folder. "I have Sterling's notes. His own handwriting. But I can't reach him until morning." "Morning?" Kovacs's voice cracked. "Morning is too late. They want answer now." Malik shut his eyes. He saw Layla's face, tired but smiling in the photo on his phone. He saw the sticky note ripped from the desk, the man in the dark suit prowling the hall. He realized Dawn wasn't his ally anymore. It was his enemy. Each hour closer to sunrise was an hour closer to collapse. "I'll find a way," Malik said finally. "Hold them steady. Just a little longer." The line went quiet then. "You are my last bridge, my friend." Malik hung up, palms slick. He set the phone down and pulled the folder from the cart. He spread the papers across the scarred wooden table of the janitor's lounge. The words blurred at first, then sharpened. Extend line of credit up to 6 months if collateral secured. Penalty reduction negotiable at 15%. That was the key. But how could he make investors across an ocean believe a janitor's voice? His eyes drifted to the ancient desktop computer in the corner, its tower buzzing faintly. It was connected to the building's intranet, rarely used except to log maintenance reports. Malik's pulse raced. Maybe, just maybe, he could send something through. He logged in with his employee ID. The screen flickered, then displayed menus he barely understood. He clicked aimlessly until he found Email Access, Administrative. The system asked for credentials. He tried his own. Denied. His throat tightened. He tried again, this time glancing at a sticky note taped above the monitor. Night Supervisor password, JN123. He typed it in. The system unlocked. Malik exhaled. He didn't know what miracle had guided him here, but he wouldn't waste it. He opened a blank message. His fingers hovered. What could he write? Would anyone believe him? He decided against pretending to be Sterling. It would collapse instantly. Instead, he typed, "To whom it may concern, this message is urgent. The Budapest client requires confirmation before dawn. CO notes confirm extension of credit, 6 months if collateral secured in machinery, and penalty reduction negotiable at 15%. Please review attached notes for verification." He paused, then added, Time is critical. I am the only staff available at this hour. Delivering these documents to the CO immediately upon arrival. Malik Johnson, night staff. He scanned the wording. Clumsy, but honest. He attached a photo of Sterling's handwritten margin notes, taken quickly on his phone. Then, hesitating only once, he hit send. The system beeped. Message sent. Relief surged through him, but it lasted only seconds. The door to the lounge creaked. Malik spun. The man in the dark suit stood in the doorway, briefcase in hand. His eyes swept the table, landing on the spread-out papers. "You shouldn't be in here," the man said flatly. His voice carried the weight of authority, but not the kind that came from a badge. It was the kind that came from secrets. Malik's body tensed. "I'm just cleaning," he said. "Cleaning doesn't involve confidential files." The man stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Give me the folder." Malik's jaw clenched. He glanced at the card, then at the papers. He had survived too much tonight to hand everything over to a stranger. "No," he said, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. The man's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand. Those papers are dangerous in the wrong hands. And yours are the right ones?" Malik shot back. For a moment, silence crackled like static. Then the man smirked. "You've made a mistake. One you'll regret." He stepped closer. Malik's hand darted for the mop handle, gripping it like a staff. He planted it against the floor, his body squaring. He wasn't a fighter anymore, not like in his youth, but fear made him firm. The man sneered. "A janitor with a stick? That's your defense?" "No," Malik said quietly. "My defense is the truth. And I've already sent it." The man's smirk faltered. His gaze flicked to the computer screen still glowing. He cursed under his breath. Without another word, he spun on his heel and left, the door slamming behind him. Malik collapsed into the chair, the mop sliding from his grip. His hand shook, but his chest swelled with a flicker of something unfamiliar, defiance. The clock on the wall read 4:10 a.m. less than 3 hours until Sterling arrived. Less than 3 hours until Malik could hand over the folder and step out of the shadows. But 3 hours could stretch like years when enemies lurked in the building. He gathered the folder again, this time taping it beneath the underside of the janitor's card, hidden from plain sight. He wheeled the card back into the corridor, his eyes sharp, scanning every shadow. The building felt alive now, doors creaking, vents groaning, faint footsteps echoing above. Dawn was coming, but with it, danger. Every squeak of the cart's wheels was a drumbeat counting down to sunrise. Every step Malik took carried the weight of Kovacs's empire, the trust of desperate investors, and the shadow of men who wanted him silenced. As he turned the corner, Malik whispered to himself, voice low but fierce, "Just a race against dawn. And I don't plan on losing." By the time the first streaks of dawn filtered through the glass walls of Sterling Global, Malik had walked the 32nd floor more times than he could count. The squeak of his cart wheels had become a metronome to his thoughts, steady, deliberate, determined. The folder was still taped beneath the cart, safe for now. But Malik's nerves were frayed, every creak of the building making him glance over his shoulder. At 6:45 a.m., the first executives began to arrive. Polished shoes clicked across the marble, briefcases gleamed, expensive perfumes drifted into the air. None of them spared Malik more than a passing glance. To them, he was invisible, just another piece of the furniture that kept their empire spotless. But Malik knew better. He carried something none of them did. The truth. At precisely 7:02 a.m., Richard Sterling himself strode into the office. He was tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that seemed to catch every ray of morning light. His presence filled the space like a storm contained within skin. Assistants trailed behind him, juggling schedules and files, their words tumbling over one another. Malik froze by his cart, his pulse hammering. This was the moment. He had promised Kovacs he would deliver the message directly to Sterling. Yet now, staring at the man who signed billion-dollar contracts with a flick of a pen, Malik felt the weight of his uniform pressing on him. What right did he have to step forward? He almost stayed silent. Almost. But then he remembered Kovacs's voice, cracking with desperation. "You are my last bridge, my friend." He remembered Layla's text about tuition, her trust that he would always provide. He remembered the man in the dark suit, trying to strip the truth away. Malik gripped the cart handle, wheeled it toward Sterling's office, and cleared his throat. "Mr. Sterling." The CEO stopped mid-stride. His assistants froze, startled. Eyes turned toward the janitor who had dared to speak. Sterling arched a brow. "Yes?" His voice was calm, but edged with impatience. Malik swallowed hard. He reached beneath the cart, tore free the taped folder, and held it out with both hands. "Budapest," he said simply. For a moment, confusion flickered across Sterling's face. Then his eyes narrowed. He took the folder, flipped it open, scanned the notes. His assistants leaned in, whispering, but Sterling raised a hand for silence. He read in silence for a long moment. The office around him seemed to still. Then he looked up, his piercing blue eyes locking on Malik. "Where did you get this?" Malik's throat tightened. "Sir, He could lie. He could say he found it on the desk, or that someone passed it to him. But lies had already twisted this night into knots. "I answered the phone," Malik admitted. "A man named Kovacs called." He was desperate. "No one else was here. I listened. I wrote everything down. Then I found your notes in the file. He and his investors were about to walk away. I read your words to him. It held them steady, for now." Gasps rippled through the assistants. One muttered, "He answered the CEO's phone?" Another whispered, "This is outrageous." But Sterling didn't flinch. He studied Malik's face with the sharpness of a man who had built empires by seeing through deception. "You," Sterling said finally, "kept Budapest from collapsing overnight?" Malik nodded slowly. "I'm just staff here, sir. But yes, I did what I could." Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Sterling chuckled. It wasn't warm. It was sharp, edged with disbelief, but it cracked through the tension nonetheless. "My assistants," Sterling said, glancing around. "All of you with degrees, pedigrees, salaries higher than this man could dream, and yet it was the janitor who saved our largest client." The assistant shifted uncomfortably. Malik stood frozen, unsure if he was being mocked or praised. Sterling closed the folder, tucked it under his arm, and stepped closer. "What's your name?" "Malik Johnson." Sterling nodded. "Mr. Johnson, humility is a rare quality in this building. Most of my people are too busy talking to listen. You, it seems, listen better than all of them combined." Malik blinked, words caught in his throat. Sterling turned to his assistants. Schedule a call with Budapest immediately. We'll finalize the terms before the market opens. And make sure Johnson's notes are filed alongside the contract. Yes, sir. One assistant stammered. Sterling faced Malik again. His tone softened almost imperceptibly. You broke rules tonight, Johnson. But you also saved this company from disaster. That kind of judgment is rare. Malik's chest tightened. I just didn't want to see a man lose everything when I could help. Sterling's gaze lingered on him, then he extended a hand. Malik hesitated before shaking it. The CEO's grip was firm, commanding, but for a brief moment, Malik felt something else in it, respect. Power without humility destroys. Sterling said quietly, almost to himself. But humility without courage accomplishes nothing. You've shown both. Malik's throat burned. He had spent years being invisible, moving silently through these halls, yet here he stood, hand in hand with a man whose signature shaped nations. Sterling released him, turning back toward his office. I'll be expecting you in the boardroom later this morning, Johnson. I want the Budapest investors to hear from the man who kept them from walking away. Malik blinked. The boardroom? Yes. Sterling's tone brooked no argument. 7 o'clock sharp. Don't be late. Then he disappeared into his office, the door clicking shut. The assistants gawked at Malik, as if seeing him for the first time. Some with irritation, some with curiosity, one with open disdain. But Malik didn't care. His knees felt weak, his chest heavy. He returned to his cart, gripping the handle as though it might anchor him. He had shaken hands with power. And in that moment, power had bowed, if only slightly, to humility. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the city skyline, Malik whispered to himself, just one more step. Just one more promise to keep. But deep down he knew. The hardest step was still to come. The boardroom of Sterling Global was a cathedral of power. The mahogany table stretched like a runway, polished so bright it mirrored the ceiling lights. Leather chairs lined its length, each occupied by a figure in a tailored suit, faces composed into masks of authority. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, the rising sun gilding the glass towers in gold. At the head of the table sat Richard Sterling, calm and commanding, a man who had built an empire on deals and decisiveness. To his right and left, executives murmured, shuffling papers, checking their watches. Their eyes flicked toward the door, as though expecting another suit, another polished figure from their inner circle. But when the doors swung open, it wasn't a suit that entered. It was Malik Johnson. He wore the same Navy janitor's uniform he'd worn all night, sleeves rolled, hands calloused. The mop wasn't in his grip this time, but the memory of it clung to him. He paused at the threshold, his heart thudding so loudly he swore the entire board could hear it. Mr. Johnson, Sterling called, his voice cutting clean through the whispers. Take a seat. A ripple of disbelief spread around the table. One executive actually scoffed. Sir, is this a joke? He's... Sterling's gaze silenced him instantly. He is the reason our largest client hasn't walked away. Show some respect. Malik moved forward, each step heavy, with a mixture of dread and determination. He slid into the empty chair halfway down the table, the leather swallowing him whole. He felt out of place, painfully aware of the contrast between his worn uniform and their silk ties. But then he remembered Kovacs's voice. You are my partner. Sterling opened the folder Malik had rescued. "Gentlemen, ladies, this is what Johnson brought to me this morning. My own notes, which somehow disappeared from my desk during the night." A murmur spread. Malik caught snippets. Sabotage, insider, who would? Sterling continued. Had Johnson not safeguarded these, our Budapest contract would already be gone. Kovacs Industries would have collapsed, and with it, billions in projected revenue for Sterling Global. He looked down the table, his eyes sharp. Now tell me, how many of you were here at 2 a.m. answering phones? Silence. No one spoke. Sterling turned to Malik. Johnson, repeat exactly what you told Kovacs and his investors. Malik's throat tightened. Dozens of eyes pinned him, some skeptical, some curious, some outright hostile. He took a breath, remembering how he had steadied Kovacs through panic. He steadied himself the same way. I told them your words, Malik said, voice clear, that you'd extend the line of credit up to 6 months if collateral was secured in machinery. That penalty reductions were negotiable at 15%. That you weren't abandoning them. He glanced at Sterling. I didn't promise anything you hadn't already written. I just made sure they knew someone was listening. Sterling leaned back, satisfied. There is! Honesty. Precision. Courage. One executive spoke up, irritation sharp in his tone. With respect, sir, this is highly irregular. We can't have janitorial staff handling international contracts. No, Sterling agreed. But when my polished executives can't be bothered to answer a ringing phone, when they dismiss desperation as noise, when they treat listening as beneath them, then perhaps it's time we remembered where value truly lies. His words hung heavy. Some executives shifted uncomfortably. Others lowered their gazes. Sterling turned to Malik again. Johnson, you've done more than save a contract. You've reminded us of something essential. Power means nothing without humility. And humility means nothing without the courage to act. Malik's hands trembled in his lap. He wasn't used to this. Applause, recognition, respect, these were currencies he had never carried. But now, sitting at this table, he realized he carried something greater, proof that invisible people could change the course of empires. Sterling nodded once. Effective immediately, Johnson will serve as liaison for the Budapest account. He has earned that right. He will attend board meetings until further notice. The room erupted. Some executives protested, others murmured in shock. Malik blinked, stunned. Sir, he's not trained. He has no degree. This is madness. Sterling silenced them with a raised hand. Training can be given. Degrees can be earned. But you cannot teach integrity. You cannot manufacture trust. And you cannot fake the kind of listening that kept an empire from falling overnight. Johnson has what you lack. Malik felt heat rise behind his eyes. He wanted to protest, to say he wasn't ready. But another part of him, the part that had steadied his daughter through hard nights, the part that had calmed Kovacs' panic, rose up and spoke for him. I'll do my best, Malik said simply. Sterling's lips curved in the faintest smile. That's all I ask. The meeting continued, details hashed out, terms debated. Malik listened more than he spoke, his notes meticulous, his patience steady. More than once, Sterling asked for his input, not because Malik was an expert in finance, but because he had proven himself an expert in people. By the time the meeting adjourned, the sun had risen fully, flooding the boardroom with golden light. The executives filed out, some avoiding Malik's gaze, others offering curt nods of acknowledgement. Malik sat for a moment longer, staring at the city sprawl beneath him. He thought of Layla. He thought of how he would tell her that her father wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was something else now. Not a CEO, not an executive, but a voice. A bridge. A man who had sat at the table of power and proven he belonged. Sterling approached as the room emptied. He placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. "You broke protocol last night, but you saved us all. Don't ever forget that." Malik nodded, emotion clogging his throat. "Thank you for trusting me." "No," Sterling corrected gently. "Thank you for teaching me." As Sterling left, Malik rose slowly, his reflection shimmering in the glass windows. For the first time, he didn't see invisibility staring back at him. He saw possibility. The world had always told him to stay in the shadows, to keep his head down, to mop the floors and remain silent. But last night, a ringing phone had called him into the light. And now, Malik Johnson walked out of the boardroom not just as a cleaner, not just as a man who had answered by chance, but as a new voice at the table.